Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks interesting to you, please carry on and watch the video. And also, just one more thing before we go. Please, if you enjoy the video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. But with all that out of the way, let's carry on with the video. Okay, so starting off with our outer brain here, what I've done is I've given it a zenithal highlight prime, and that is starting off with black and then going over top of it, catching all those high points of our miniature with a white, so we can see where those recesses and shadows and highlights are. And as well as that, you can also see that I've separated them out between the actual outer brain piece itself and the little base he's on as well, just so it makes it a little bit easier to paint, especially when I got to get in there all in between those tentacles and things. So I thought that'd make it a little bit easier. And as you can see here, I'm using Basilicanum Grey, which is a contrast paint, and I'm just using it to give this base a coverage in it, and what it's going to do is turn it a nice greyish blue and give us our colour. And I'm not going to even worry about giving any highlights or dry brushing over top of it, because I actually like the way it comes out looks. I like that slight blue tinge there, and we've also already got most of that baked in with it since we gave it that zenithal highlight prime. So nice easy step there, so we can move on to the actual outer brain. Now we're starting on the actual outer brain itself. What we're going to do is come in with our first colour, and it's going to be a contrast paint. And what we're going to be using here is Volupus Pink. And this is going to be for the actual brain itself. We want to give it a nice good overall coverage, making sure that we get into all those little nooks and crannies, since we've got all the little pieces of the brain there, the nice big swirly wormy things, and we want to make sure that our contrast paint gets absolutely everywhere. I'm not worried too much about getting it accidentally on the tentacles at this point. That's why I wanted to start with the innermost piece, so we can work our way out and try and avoid any accidental overlapping of paint and getting it where we don't want it to. So it's just thinking about your miniature as you're painting it up to try and save you a lot of touch-up work in later steps. Then once we have that bit painted up, what we're going to do now is come in with some ultramarine blue, and I'm going to be using this to just be painting up the little waves, because it's sitting in sort of like a abandoned sort of like well slash like pool type thing, and I've just wanted to come in here with a blue to separate it out from. Now you can use any colour you want here. You might want to go with a crazy green or yellow, something like that. I just wanted to make it look like a bit of water, and having the blue is going to really help stand out and really edge the actual base of our outer brain here as well in some different colours to try and help separate it out and give a little bit of something for your eye to look at, to draw in around the edges as you're looking around that sort of cobblestone pool that he's sitting in. Then once we have that painted up, what we're going to do now is come in with some royal purple. And what we're going to be doing for this is we're going to be using this as the base colour for our tentacles. So nice and easy to go around here, and since we've already got that brain, we don't have to worry too much about getting our paint crossing over here. But of course we are going to have a little bit of a problem, so take a little bit of time when you're getting right in there close between the two areas, because they don't in the actual miniature itself, the brain and the tentacles don't actually touch, so there is a little bit of a gap there. It can be a little bit tricky if you're painting up this miniature. But like I said, it's just about practicing brush control. Switch to a flatter brush or something you need to get in there just so you can get into those areas. But because we painted up the actual brain part itself, we're going to sort of stop a lot of that accidental cross contamination between the two paints there. So that's why I wanted to do the tentacles last, so it's a little bit easier to clean up on the tentacle than it is to try and clean up on the actual brain part itself. And then of course it's just a matter of going around and making sure we get a nice smooth cut on all of those tentacles. Then once we have those tentacles painted up, now what we're going to do is I'm going to come back in with a lighter blue now, and I'm going to use crystal blue to do this. And this is just to come in and paint up the highlights of the sort of like waves that our outer brain is sitting in. And as you can see, it's quite poppy and eye-catching against the purples and the pinks we've got on there. So I think it comes in as a nice good like piece to help highlight that. And like I said, since it's got these little bits of waves, I'm just coming in and picking out those edge parts to really highlight them up, so it looks like we've got a little bit of water in there and giving something to help attract the eye. Then once we have that complete, what we're going to do now is come in with another purple, and this one here is going to be orc blood, and this is a pinkish sort of purple. And what we're going to be using it for is to be stippling the highest points. As you can see on these tentacles, as I'm going around here, they've sort of got like a ridge down the center of them, and that's where I want to be focusing on. I'm just going to be stippling them in. Now this is going to be quite a long process, especially with this orc blood. It's quite a thin paint, but that's okay because I want to build up that texture slowly along there and really help get it to the point where I want it. Just aiming for the sort of ridges in the middle to give it like transition, since it's going to be a highlighted area. So it's just a matter of spending some time and really getting into the area and just lightly stippling it along that ridge there of the tentacle. Then once we have those areas stippled, what we're going to do is come in again, this time with faerzress purple, and we want to be stippling it again, and this time even narrower again, just really aiming for those higher points. And like in the exact same last step, we want to just be carefully going along, slowly building up that color. It's going to be a little bit hard to see on camera since we're using purple over purple here, but in the end it's going to slowly build up those lighter areas and give a nice transition to where the highlights are going to be from the darker parts of the edge of our tentacles. So now that we have our highlighting and our stippling complete, what I'm going to do now is come in with some druchii violet, which is a purple wash, and I'm going to be giving them a wash. And what that's going to do is all of the areas where I haven't sort of blended it quite properly with our stippling technique, applying the wash over top is going to really help tie them together and really bring it into a cohesive piece, and it's going to smooth out the transitions between all of those stipple areas and make it look like it's a nice natural part that's flowing from a dark to a light highlight. So that's my theory behind it anyway, so we'll see how well that comes out once it's all dry, but it's going to help smooth off a lot of those unsightly stippling areas that I wasn't quite happy with. Okay, so this is the part where I'm just going to be diverging just a little bit from sort of official artwork where you see elder brains and stuff, because they're very simple and they sort of just seem to have, or at least from the artwork that I've seen, where they just sort of are purple tentacles with a pinkish purple brain inside of them, and I thought that was a little bit boring. For me, I wanted to add in a little bit more pop of colour and give you a little bit of eye-catching part of a miniature to have a look on and add that visual interest. And as you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing some green and I'm just placing some spots along the tentacles, and I'm just going to be placing it along those areas that we've stippled up and highlighted to give it a very vibrant and bright area on the model to really help set your eye around and look around the whole piece of the model and give it something extra to have a look at. So you can add in, of course, little details all over your miniatures like this to give it some extra little pop. Now that we have those areas of nice popping colour, what we're going to do is come in with some pink, and this is a nice bright pink, squid pink is what I'm using here, and we're going to be using this for another nice tedious process here, and that is going to be highlighting a lot of these little ridges on our brain here. So just coming in and picking out mainly on the top here, we're not too worried about the bottom as much, all the areas where it's going to naturally catch the light, and just very carefully going around and picking them all out. Just aiming for those very, very top bits. Like I said, this is going to be a nice, long, tedious process here, so don't worry if you don't want to do this here, but it's going to add in a nice bit of visual pop, especially on the top of it there in the end. So it is going to be worth it here to go in and carefully pick out a few. Even if you only want to pick out a few of them on the top, it's going to really help set this miniature up to another level. And here is another part of the miniature where I wanted to add in a little bit of colour. I'm going to be using a desert yellow here, sort of a mustard yellow colour. And it has sort of like this sort of ridge on the brain here. I thought it was a beak at first, but it's not actually a beak. It's another part, sort of like a bit of like armour plating for the actual elder brain itself. And like I said, I wanted to add in a bit more colour here to try and separate it out from just being purples and pinks and a little bit of blue there. We've got to find other ways to inject some colour and life into this piece, and this is another great place to do this. So coming in here with a nice yellow is going to really help separate it out and give you a nice little key area that you can look on the miniature as you're placing it on the table. Then once you've done that, it's time for another long tedious process, and that's coming in with some scar tissue here. This is a slight different colour pink to the squid pink we used before on our actual brain. And what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be painting all the little suction cups along the tentacles here. So like I said, another long tedious process here, especially since I'm using pink over quite a dark purple. It's going to take at least 2 coats to get a nice even layer here. So maybe you want to switch to a different color. It's also another place where you could use a very different color in here to give it a nice vibrancy on the piece here. But as you can see, it pops out immediately against our dark purple of the underside of our tentacles here. So just spend a bit of time picking out all those little suction cups on the model, and you'll see how it really comes out and adds to the piece. Okay, so now we've got the tentacles all nice and base coated. Now we want to come in and pick out the little teeth that each one of those little tentacles have. And what I'm going to be using is some deck tan to do this. Sort of any off-white colour is going to be good to do here. And look here, it's just the same sort of tedious process, but going out and picking out all the little teeth along the tentacle here, which it does have a lot. Be careful as you're painting up. I got poked a couple of times by the teeth. They can be a little bit sharp, so be wary of that as you're painting them up. Okay, so then once we've got those areas base coated, we want to give them a little bit of depth and shadow, and we're going to be using red tone to do this. So this is a matter of just coming in and picking out all those areas, trying to get a little bit to settle into the recesses of each one of those suction cups as well. So it's going to add in just that little bit more depth onto the piece. And like I said again, it's going to be a nice tedious process going around picking out little suction cups on each one of those tentacles. So don't be afraid to spend a little bit of time here. And of course, as you're doing it, just be careful that we don't get any accidental spillage as well when you're placing this on here. I know I did a couple of times. If you've got it just in little places, it's not too bad, but just be aware of big pooling areas. Then once that's completely dry, what we're going to do now is come in with some stirge tan, which is an even lighter pink again, and separate it out from our squid pink we use for our brain. And we're going to be highlighting just the rims around each one of those suction cups. So tedious process after tedious process here, but trust me, it all becomes nice in the end, and we get a nice cohesive piece with a lot of detail on it. So spending little bits of time here doing little tedious bits like this can really help elevate your miniature rather than just base coating it. So that's what we want to do. We want to take it above just base coating each thing and give that pop and definition to pieces of our miniature. As well as that too, I'm also going to be quickly going in and doing it to the each one of the little teeth on the suction cups as well. So just going through, giving that there, and then coming back in with our original color that we use for our tooth and picking out each one of those teeth as well. Then once we have that all complete, what I'm going to do now is come in with some abandoned black, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using this for all the little veins slash like tentacles that it has over the top of the brain itself. It's sort of an iconic image if you see it in official D&D artwork with the elder brain, as it has these nice sort of black tendrils all over the brain. I'm not quite sure if it's like a corrupting feature or that, but it gives a very cool look to the piece. And this one does have it sculpted in here. It may be very hard to tell, especially on camera, what sort of tentacles I'm painting up here, but there are ones that are slightly separated out from the actual brain itself, and it has these like black veins going through it. So I'm just going through and picking those areas out, and you'll see by the very end that it really adds on to the actual piece that we're painted up here and really give it a nice bit of color in there as well. Even though we're painting it black, it gives it a nice area to stand out on that brain as well. So it's just a matter of coming in and picking those out. And then once we've done that, we've finished our elder brain, so we can move on to our nice glamour shots and see how it came out with the base and everything connected. So let's move on to that, shall we? And with all that complete, we have finally finished painting up our elder brain from Reaper Miniatures. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along with what I did here, or you just want to use this video as some inspiration in painting up your own miniatures. But with all that said guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.